And what is going on, everybody? Welcome back into Club Jaguar, guys, your best and favorite live podcast right here on this channel every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time from today all the way up until the end of season. Hopefully, after we win a Super Bowl, we're going to keep you guys covered right here. And just so you guys know, this stream is now sponsored, guys. BetUS is back, and they're sponsoring this show for you guys so we can all get compensated appropriately for the time we're kind of being put in on here. So helping out the sponsor definitely helps out the channel. So with that said, let's get a quick word from BetUS.
Michael Vick at BetUS.com. Catch an incredible 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits, plus 10% gambler's insurance. BetUS, my online sportsbook and casino.
So with that said, shout out to BetUS. Link in the description. 125% deposit bonus on your first 3 deposits up to $2,500. So with that said, it's not me that makes the show, okay? I have a couple of people that join me that know way more about football than me. We'll start with the man that's at every single practice, giving us all the best updates and everything. We got Jordan DeLugo. What's up, Jordan?
What's going on? Fired up for a day off tomorrow. It has been 7 days of Jaguars training camp so far. Been a lot of fun, but definitely excited to get into it tonight.
Yeah, and those people that are not in Jacksonville and are up from north, sometimes you have your New York Jags fans. Sometimes you have, your overseas Jags fans. It is hot out there, okay? So, Jordan's out there in the trenches giving us all the updates that we need to make us know that, okay, we're well prepared for what the Jaguars will and can be in 2024. And also, guys, we have my buddy Jason from Jaguars United. What's up, Jason?
What's up, boys? My first thought when Jordan said he had the day off was like, he's gonna have to sweat in the smoldering heat for one day. He's gonna be able to keep his salt and potassium inside his body for a day. So a much well-earned day off, Jordan. I appreciate it.
So,
yeah, the dog's like, I need my walks. She doesn't care how hot it is. So still going to be some sweating, but not going to be out there for 3 straight hours. So good.
100%. And you only have a certain amount of actually open practices. And hopefully you guys are all getting out there too. I mean, the Jaguars still, I don't know about the availability of like Saturday and Sunday open practice tickets, but if you guys want to get out there, take a day off PTO, go on a random Tuesday, check out the Jaguars website, see what's available for you so you guys can kind of get in on the action. Lots of cool stuff going on over there. And of course, you have Shade now. Okay, you have Shade, and it really does make all the difference. Kind of a preview for what's to come for a $1.4 billion stadium that's coming in.
And some big ass fans too.
Yeah, they literally have fans out. I'm not sure what they're doing, but they have fans out there, so they're pushing air around a little bit. But all that stuff is, well and good. So shout out to everybody in here. If you guys want to support the show, the best way to do it is to drop a like so we can really blow up the show. Of course, we're keeping you guys covered all the way through training camp, preseason, all the way through the regular season. And, we want this show to be one of the best things out there, okay? I don't know how many other shows are out there giving you guys, 3 of the top, YouTubers out there, and especially when it comes to other fan bases as well. So we got a good show here for you guys. So like the stream, definitely go subscribe to both Jordan and Jason. Their links are down below. And if you guys have any kind of a question and you guys want to kind of steer the direction of the show, we do have that super chat option open for you. Vincent actually dropped the super chat before the show started, but I think I'm going to read this maybe toward the end of it because I do have a few things that I want to address. So first of all, Jordan, you were out there, really when we brought you on first, the Jaguars only had 1 practice. So, really kind of a micro view at it. You can only really give us a take from 1 practice, but now, you have a whole entire week. And of course, everybody was up in arms really after the first several practices, the non-padded practice, because man, the defense is dominating the offense. Like what's going on with the offense? The sky is falling. But it seems like since, really Monday and even Tuesday when the pads came on, and of course, today, the Jaguars offense looks to be ascending a little bit. So definitely give us your take on what you've been seeing over the course of the last couple of days.
Yeah, I think it's been super competitive the last 3 days between the Jags offense and defense. The defense did get off to an extremely hot start early on in camp. They've continued to be, as I said, competitive, but I think it's been much more even between the 2 sides. You haven't seen a lot of mental errors. You haven't seen like a lot of mistakes by either squad. Just a lot of really competitive reps throughout the last 3 days, and the last 2 days have had full pads, so you've seen the intensity pick up a little bit. Saw what was close to a skirmish after Tank Bigsby got hit late, but it got defused pretty quickly. So nothing big out there in terms of the fighting. Hopefully you can avoid fights. Those kind of just waste time, but they do show the energy. But so far, so good, in my opinion, what we've seen from Jaguars training camp. You've avoided major injuries for the most part, I think. Still waiting on Eric Armstead to get out there, but you're seeing the offense really come to life. As I mentioned, the last 3 days, defense continuing to compete. And that's what you want to see as competition from both sides. I don't think you want to see the offense just dominate every single day, defense dominate every single day. You want to see it kind of go back and forth, and there to be some intense competition out there.
Yeah, I got a question for Jordan. And before I ask it, I thought this earlier. I was like, I've seen people do like podcasts about the Jags. I don't think I've ever seen anyone ever do a live podcast before. So like the fact that we're doing this live, like I don't know if people watching this understand. Jordan doesn't know I'm asking him this, so I may need to take a second to think about it. But like you've been to training camps in the past, like how much can we learn from training camp? Like when you see things that are happening at training camp, like you're seeing all the days, like how much do you see things that translate to the season? You're like, oh yeah, I saw that at training camp, or vice versa. You saw things in training camp and it didn't work out. Like how much have you seen in the past that you can learn from training camp?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it varies. I think that there's been times where you see a player dominate throughout training camp and then they don't have the type of season you'd expect. And then you've seen players kind of look average throughout training camp and then they have a great season, or entire units look really good and then they don't perform at the same level you kind of expected. But generally speaking, if players play smart, aggressive, confident, and they just go out there and ball out throughout the entirety of training camp, they're going to end up playing well throughout a season. Like you've seen Tyson Campbell do it like every single year, Josh Allen do it every single year. And for the most part, when those guys have been healthy, they've been fantastic out there for the Jaguars. So I do think you can glean some things from training camp from an individual perspective. I think offensive line and defensive line is the hardest because you don't see quarterbacks getting hit, right? You don't see running backs even getting hit as hard as they possibly can when they're carrying the ball, trying to get past the line of scrimmage. So I think that can be a little bit more difficult, but you can really see the movement from wide receivers, from corners. And looking back at last year, Calvin Ridley is a really interesting one because he was clearly so talented, and he is so talented. But I don't think that you necessarily saw all the rust that was going to show up during the regular season throughout those training camp practices, just because, again, it's not live speed. Even when you're going live in training camp, as Press Taylor mentioned today, it's still not live the way a real game is. And so I think that timing, the physicality, all those different factors, they do change once the whistle blows for the start of the regular season.
And I'm curious with you, Jordan, because I was kind of talking to Jason about this kind of before the show started because, it feels like when you look at really every season since 2020, going into the regular season during training camp, like 2020, we knew we were going to be pretty bad just because we're getting rid of everybody. And then 2021, there was all the hype behind Trevor Lawrence and you had Urban Meyer. And then 2022, okay, Urban Meyer didn't work out. We have a Super Bowl head coach now with Doug Peterson. 2023, you were just coming off the playoffs, so everything was trending up. And then, this offseason, it just doesn't, it just has a different feel. It almost feels like, now they're in a situation where, like, it almost seems tougher. Like, for example, I feel like with Trevor Lawrence, do you think that they're trying to make him as uncomfortable as he can when it comes to, giving him a lot of different looks on, this defense when it comes to Ryan Nielsen's defense? Because, I know, and maybe the type of defensive style that he has is something that maybe Trevor Lawrence isn't great against. I mean, we remember when they played the Atlanta Falcons in 2023, when you looked at the box score, I mean, I think the final score was like 23-7. So it looked like a domination, but the Jaguars have only scored one touchdown that game. So do you feel like they're like the competition is maybe ramped up and the defense, maybe Doug Peterson is really trying to put make the defense put a lot of pressure on the offense? Because I know for me, I feel really good about the Jaguars defense going into this year. They spent a lot of money, and they also invested a lot of draft capital there. And also, I just feel like now that we have a different when a different coach that's kind of the head coach of the defense out there, it feels like everything is trending in the right direction. But my main thing that I question with the Jaguars is the offense. Did not much happen to the Jaguars this offseason besides like pretty much flipping out a couple receivers. The offensive line stayed the same, and your coaching staff pretty much stayed the same. And now it's on Press Taylor and Doug Peterson to really figure out a better offensive game plan than last year. So I guess, how do you feel overall when it comes to, do you think the defense is putting a lot of more pressure on the offense? And do you feel a lot of pressure on this offense?
Yeah, certainly. I think the defense looks more competitive. I think there's several different aspects to it. I don't think it's like some mandate from Doug Peterson to try to, put as much pressure on Trevor Lawrence as you can from a defensive perspective. I just think when you look at the fact that the defense is faster, like you look at the secondary, Tyson Campbell obviously has been there, but he's a very fast corner. Ronald Darby is faster than anyone else you had out there. Darnell Savage is much faster than Trey Herndon in the slot. Jarian Jones is much faster than those guys. DeAndre Prince comes in as a 4-3 guy as well. So you're just seeing a lot more speed out there. And then you're also seeing the fact that Ryan Nielsen and Chris Richard, the coaching, they have these guys playing fast and aggressive. A lot of man coverage, which, to your point, you didn't see a ton of man coverage in practice or on the game field from the Jaguars over the last couple years. And I think that these guys are playing fast, aggressive. They're excited about playing in man coverage, and their coaching is kind of leading them to have more success than you've seen from the secondaries of years past in practice so far. And so I think that those combinations, and then the fact that you've got Brian Thomas Jr. also trying to kind of get his sea legs throughout training camp and develop as a rookie. Gabe Davis, who wasn't fully healthy all offseason, was kind of still recovering, and then has been not fully going every single practice. He's trying to work his way in. Obviously, the connection with Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram is there. You've seen the connection with Travis Etienne as well out of the backfield, but I think you're still kind of growing some of those outside receiver chemistry between Gabe Davis, Brian Thomas Jr., and Trevor Lawrence, and all those factors are really kind of playing into the slow start for the offense, but you're seeing it come together over the last few days.
What about, so I know Joshua Cephas and Elijah Cooks both had big catches today. They're both kind of guys that it might be one or the other that makes the roster. Do you see a situation where both makes the roster? And if not, like, who have you seen in camp that may have the edge over the other one between those two guys?
It would surprise me if the Jaguars keep 7, and I think for both of them to make the roster, you would have to keep 7. Now, they have done that in the past. They did it last year. It's much more common to keep 6 receivers, and you've seen Doug Peterson keep 7, keep 6. He kept 5 one year in Philly to start the year. So there's different ways to go about it. Certainly, I think whoever makes the roster, they're going to have to feel very comfortable that they can contribute on special teams and do the dirty work. Which Tim Jones obviously can do those things. I don't think he's nearly as talented as a receiver as either of the guys you brought up. But I would guess one of those two will make the 90 or the 53-man roster at the end of camp. And it's going to come down to who they think can really contribute on special teams at a higher level. I think both guys can contribute as receivers.
Yeah, and that's one to really look out for, because I think of all camp battles, like even beyond like starting kind of battles, I really think that battle for like the final wide receiver spot. I mean, you have so many guys that could potentially make it. Of course, the Jaguars love Tim Jones. He's been on the team a little bit. Parker Washington, I think, has a lot to offer in a receiving game. I mean, he is sometimes when he's running these routes and catching these balls, and even some of the catches he had in 2023, it was like he has a special ability. And of course, Elijah Cooks and Joshua Cephas is a guy. And like, the Jaguars are a team that, if we've been good at anything, it's been finding undrafted wide receivers, creating roles for them, and really allowing these different guys to flourish in some kind of role. All the way dating back to, Allen Hurns and Keelan Cole. And, lately it's been more of like special team roles. but that's always something for the Jaguars to really look at. So I know in the show we have a few things I want to talk about. One thing I really want to get into is the different roles that we're expecting from the Jaguars rookies this year. We're still kind of in a slow period. We have a little bit of some training camp to really talk about, but I want to really get into figuring out what kind of role we can carve out for these guys this year. Quick super chat. Victor threw us a $2 holla. He says, "Cheers to a fun season." Thanks, man. So I guess the final question I have for Jordan before we move into the rookies is, I think you've kind of alluded to this already. Like, were you at all, I guess, worried about the offense in the first few practices, and really compared to what it is now? Can you get the sense that everything is moving in the right direction and we're on schedule for everything?
Yeah, I think things are definitely moving in the right direction. I think it's fair to say like it was a bit worrisome, not that the defense was ahead of the offense, but by how much they were ahead of the offense. Like you do typically see defenses come out playing a little bit better, more consistent than offenses in training camp. Everybody talks about it. But it was the margin by which how much better the defense was playing than the offense that was a little concerning. But yeah, the offense has pretty much done a 180, and the receivers look more confident. The quarterbacks look more confident, not just Trevor Lawrence. Like Mac Jones and CJ Beathard have been playing better as well. And so I think you're seeing just things move in the right direction. Some of that will have to do with just the fact that, like, on the worst day, I think, well, maybe second worst day, there was 3 really bad days in a row for the offense to start training camp. But in the red zone, for example, early on, they just only had like 6 plays installed for the whole practice. And so that's just going to really limit what you have going on offensively. And they're not game planning against the Jaguars defense right now. What they're doing is trying to install their plays, and so they might not have necessarily a perfect route combination for the coverage that they're seeing. They might not be checking into a play that's a man beater if they see man coverage, or a zone beater if they see zone coverage. They're just kind of going out there and getting a feel for this play in this situation and then kind of developing from there. So it's not necessarily about winning every rep from a did you score? Did you not? Did you catch it? Did you not? It's kind of about the mental and doing things the right way and growing in that regard. So it is difficult to kind of judge everything that's going on, but at the same time, all we can judge is the results of what's happening. So I do think the offense is moving in the right direction over the last few days.
Cool, man. Cool. Appreciate. We really appreciate the insight, man. It's cool because, of course, me and Jason are able to be there and really having someone. This is like if this podcast here is like the Miami Football Club, Jordan is Messi. Okay, we got we got an elite person on this podcast, and yeah, we appreciate all the insight. So now I want to kind of move into really just because a lot of times when you draft different players, it's easy to put them in a role. Like last year when the Jaguars drafted Anton Harrison in the first round, it's like, oh, he's going to be our right tackle. When, you draft the Tank Bigsby, in the third round, it's like, oh, he'll be the RB2. But I feel like when you look at this draft class, it's kind of, when it comes to really pinpointing an exact role, it can be a little bit tough just because they play a little bit different types of roles. So, of course, the player we'll start out with is the Jaguars' first round pick, Brian Thomas Jr. Trent Baalke did a masterful job of moving back 6 spots, picking up a lot of draft capital in the process to be able to, still get the player that they most likely wanted. The whole debate was quarterback, wide receiver. The Jaguars wound up drafting wide receiver. So when you look at really everything with the wide receiver position this offseason, I mean, you can see Christian Kirk is still slotted in there to play the Jaguar slot, but your 2 outside guys from 2023 are now gone. Calvin Ridley is gone. Zay Jones is gone. Now, I know when you look at this on Madden, it's like, okay, Gabe Davis replaces a Zay Jones and Brian Thomas Jr. replaces a Calvin Ridley. But it's not really always that easy when it comes to what really winds up happening. So I'm curious with Jason. So when we bring in a Brian Thomas Jr., like what role do you think that he really has for the Jaguars, in his rookie season?
I mean, I think a lot of Jags fans initially, and this is including myself, kind of fell into he's going to be the outside receiver. He's going to run verticals. back shoulder pylon fades guy only. And then when you start to actually look at what he did in college, is he was actually pretty versatile on where he can line up. He had a lot of huge plays at receiver lined up from the slot. And I know we have Christian Kirk as our slot guy, but a Doug Peterson offense is going to be multiple, right? So the Brian Thomas Jr. actually has the ability to line up in the slot and attack you from the slot. And where that helps you with his speed is he can run the skinny post, he can run the corner, and like that really presses defenses in a lot of different ways. I mean, the Ole Miss game and the Florida game, he ate from the slot. And like where that helps you is like you talked about earlier, like checking out of defenses, like whether you're in a 2 high cover 2 or a 1 high cover 1 or cover 3, lining up in the slot allows you to attack in the middle of the field in the post, to the sidelines and the corners. And he really can do that, and additionally, he can line up on the outside. What I wanted to kind of see more in his film was how he handled a good press corner, because a good press corner in the NFL is a lot different than a press corner in college. And if you look at his NFL draft bio, it says that he has a good press break with his feet. And I've noticed in the NFL, you got to be really elite to break the press with just your feet. So I'm interested to see how he does that. I do like his clean release when he's not pressed, but when you have his size and speed, I mean, you're going to have that clean release. So look for him to be multiple in the formations, whether they're in tight formation to the hash, whether they're in more of a spread formation out to the sideline. But I think the versatility of him as a wide receiver goes further than just the guy that stretches the field from the sideline. So I think look for him to be more impactful in those areas than I think a lot of Jaguar fans initially thought.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that, Jordan.
Yeah, I think that that's true. I think obviously you're developing a role here in Jacksonville as a young football player it's so difficult for rookies going from finishing your college career straight into training for the combine and then getting ready for the draft, and then you get into your new situation with your NFL team, and it's a hell of a whirlwind for those guys. But I think that Brian Thomas Jr. is progressing, and I agree with everything Jason said. And you talk about him playing from the slot. I mean, you can move Christian Kirk around the formation. You can have Brian Thomas Jr. in the slot, Christian Kirk in the backfield, which you've seen a couple times. Christian Kirk in the backfield running like halfback angles out of the backfield. That's an absolute mismatch. You saw him score a touchdown against the Colts in 2022 doing that. But you can have multiple guys lined up tight to the formation. It doesn't have to be, 3 guys out there and there can only be 1 slot receiver. Like you're not that pigeonholed. And so one of the cool things is you've seen Doug Peterson, Trevor Lawrence, Christian Kirk. They've done a hell of a job running the slot fade, and Brian Thomas Jr. scored a lot of touchdowns running the slot fade last year. So you can definitely see him doing that at a high level and having a different skill set on the slot fade than a Christian Kirk, because he has the ability to not only get open on that route and create separation down the field, but also if it's not a perfect situation and you don't get open, he has the ability to go up and get it as well, that Christian Kirk doesn't quite have that same size and catch radius. So I think it'll be really interesting to see that. And I do think you're just going to see him used a lot more. The Jaguars have consistently talked about the fact that he has the ability to run the entire route tree. You didn't see that as much at LSU, but that's not necessarily because he doesn't have the ability, but because of LSU's like, we got Jaden Daniels, we got Malik Neighbors, we got Brian Thomas Jr. Let's just attack vertical all the time, and it worked like a charm for them offensively. And talking about beating press, I do think that that's going to be an area where he has to grow. I think hopefully Gabe Davis is facing more press as the X on the line of scrimmage. Brian Thomas Jr. getting a little bit more free releases by not being lined up as the X and not being on the line of scrimmage as much. At least that's what I would hope to see early on to create advantageous situations for Brian Thomas Jr. and build up some confidence early on in his rookie year.
He also had the jet sweep touchdown against Florida. So, I mean, also you have that dynamic that you could run with him if you wanted to.
Yeah, I think there's some yak ability and some, ability, like you're saying, with the ball in his hands.
Yeah, and I know last year, I think my biggest complaint, because there's a bunch of stuff going on with the wide receivers. I mean, outside of just injuries, I mean, it hurt not having Zay Jones, just because In 2022, one reason why the offense did so good was because Zay Jones was healthy, but I think we also missed Marvin Jones a lot more than we really thought we would, because we didn't have that guy in the red zone that could really get that back shoulder fade. I mean, they didn't really ever try Evan Ingram doing that very much. So they just didn't have anybody that was really lining up on the outside and being able to do that. And it just felt like it was lacking a lot of creativity when it comes to what exactly we did with the Jaguars wide receivers. We were just kind of sticking Calvin Ridley in the same role. And of course, Calvin Ridley had faults of his own. I mean, he was really just dropping the ball too much. And when Trevor Lawrence was trying to make him his go-to guy during the season, and after all the drops, it kind of went away from that. So just never really developed there, but also it took until late to kind of try motioning him a little bit. And I don't know, it just feels like now with the Jaguars, wide receivers, between Gabriel Davis and a Brian Thomas Jr. and a Christian Kirk, maybe from Sunday to Sunday they're not going to scare teams maybe the same way that a Tyreek Hill and a Jalen Waddle will right away. But if they can figure out ways to scheme these guys into good roles when it comes to getting these guys open, which I feel like when you watch the Jaguars from 2021 to 2022, when it comes to the route concepts and guys and the offensive coordinator actually designing ways to get these guys open, it was just night and day. So that's what I'm hoping that, really this offseason, when you went into the lab and, figured out ways to get this offense going a little bit, I really hope that was, along really when it comes to the plan of trying to get better. So yeah, Brian Thomas Jr., that's one to really monitor all throughout the training camp and preseason, of course, because, he might be maybe in the raw category, but, he'll definitely get his opportunity in the regular season. So it's next up, the Jaguars in the second round, pick number 48 overall, major Trent Baalke pick. The Jaguars went with Mason Smith, defensive tackle out of LSU. Jordan, I'm curious with you, because you do a lot of, draft work. When it comes to Mason Smith, what are your expectations for what his role will be his rookie year?
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see what his role is, because obviously you have Eric Armstead, Devon Hamilton, Roy Robertson Harris, that are guys that are clearly veterans that know how to get the job done. Roy Robertson Harris has probably been miscast a little bit as a starter. Definitely going to be in a better situation now that he's more of a role player. I think you'd like him to compete with Roy Robertson Harris for those, third string reps. And I know they're not the same exact player. I think Mason Smith can play some more big physical run stuffing defensive tackle, kind of like a Devon Hamilton, but also has the athleticism to penetrate as well. Today, and Eric Armstead not practicing yet, being on the active PUP, Mason Smith had a hell of a day. I think he made 3 plays in the backfield. I think that he has really come on strong the last couple of days of practice, and you see the talent. It's there. And you saw at times at LSU, even though he was battling back from the ACL this past year, just the ability to really manhandle his opponent and dominate his opponent with his length, his strength, his athleticism. But it's going to be interesting to see, like, Devon Hamilton is a starter, right? Eric Armstead is a starter. And Roy Robertson Harris has earned, based on his paycheck, has earned the ability to have a big role. And then you've also got Adam Gotsis, Jeremiah Ledbetter, guys that are going to be competing for the team and for potentially reps. I think it'll be very interesting, but I think Mason Smith has the potential there to carve out a role as like your third or fourth rotational guy, depending on the situation.
Yeah, let's hear what you had to say, Jason.
Yeah, I know this is gonna sound hard to believe, but I'm disagreeing with Jordan here. I'm gonna have to here. Like, and here's why. Like, I think when you look at Mason Smith and you look at who he is, like pre-injury, and when you look at like his like what he could be, like I think there's a bigger role for him than that. And when you look at where they took him, it's really high in the draft. Like, you don't take a guy in the second round at 48 to be a fourth guy. And like, I know the Jags D line is going to rotate people in, and
tell Britton Strange about that.
Well, and listen, I wouldn't say all things are equal there because Brenton Strange came in and didn't perform. And I don't think that Mason Smith is going to do that. When you look at his athleticism and his potential, I kind of related a lot more to Trevon Walker, where it's a guy where you, like you said, you see the intangibles there. You see the versatility there. I mean, the dude made plays in college at all over the defensive line. I mean, he had sacks against Florida and against someone else, but from the 5 technique. So outside of the tackle, right, where we're looking at our edges playing on the weak side, and he had sacks there. He had 3. I mean, it's McNeese State, but he had 3 sacks against McNeese State from the 3 technique, right, where we're kind of looking at Armstead playing a little bit. And he had a play against Auburn where he was at the 5 technique and he came down the line on an inside zone to the opposite side of the field. And he was patient. He came down the line like a DN does and made a tackle for loss. And you combine all those things and you're like, oh, wait, this guy actually is kind of a freak that he can kind of move all across the defensive line. He ate against the run against Kentucky, and he had a tip pass for an interception against Mississippi State. So you combine all these things, and that's a guy that if he gives you production, he's hard to keep off of the field. And I am the biggest Devon Hamilton fan than anybody. I think he's amazing. I think he's a great person. I think he's a great athlete. But the reality of it is he didn't basically play at all last year, right? And you look at Roy Robertson Harris, he didn't produce at all last year. So when you pencil in those guys ahead of him, I'm just a little hesitant. And Jeremiah Ledbetter, you got a 2nd-round pick that you could maybe move in there. And so I think by week 6 or 7, everyone's going to see that Mason Smith with his athleticism and strength gives us so much more, hinging on Devon Hamilton's health and how he bounces back from everything.
Yeah. Devon Hamilton is healthy. And he's playing very well right now.
We all know coming back from injury, sometimes you're not the same for a little bit. I don't know. I hope I'm wrong. But
he's dominating out there.
My point is just that I think Jags fans will be pleasantly surprised with Mason Smith. I think he'll give us more production than people are expecting. And I think we'll see him on the field more than we think right now. That's all I'm saying.
So, Jordan, right now at practice, is Mason Smith kind of locked into, like, is he playing just strictly like 3 tech, or is he lining up kind of, on the second teamers, kind of playing a little bit of Trayvon Walker's role? Do you see them trying to maybe master him in one role before kind of letting him do other things, or what are you seeing so far?
I think he can line up, and that they'll line him up at multiple spots on the interior. I have not seen him line up on like the edge 5 tech at this point. Not saying he can't, because he absolutely does have the physical ability to do so, like Jason mentioned. But at this point, for me, it's all about developing the hands, because he has all the physical ability in the world. It's about developing that technique, continuing to grow as a pass rusher. I do think as a run defender, he's ready to go. And then as just a freak athlete, he has the ability to win with one move. At times, just because of how much more athletic he is than some of the opponents he's going to be facing. So I agree that he's a very good talent. I just look at Devon and Eric as your 2 clear starters on the interior, and then you're going to have to be fighting for reps behind that with a veteran and Roy Robertson Harris, who's trying to earn his paycheck and continue to prove that he belongs in the league. I do think that he'll be above certainly anybody else that's on the depth chart at defensive line, defensive tackle, but it's going to be a nice rotation on the interior for the Jaguars, in my opinion.
And the very, very special thing about being on the active roster as a defensive lineman is you're going to see some action. Okay. I mean, they play these guys as much as they can, and they got a good guy to coach them up, because Ryan Nielsen is apparently one of the best when it comes to coaching up these defensive linemen. And he was getting sacks out of the Atlanta Falcons defensive line. I mean, who on the Atlanta Falcons are you seeing that's out there, as these premier edge rushers? I haven't heard of one.
They had really talented interior defenders. You do have to give them that. David Onyemata and Grady Jarrett. But their edge was not super threatening.
And Calais Campbell.
Calais as well, who's still playing pretty well for them.
Yeah, and he's in Miami right now, so he's doing quite the retirement tour here. So I think he wants to get that ring. But real quick, guys, we do have a sponsor.
And why did he go to Miami?
I don't know.
The weather.
Week one,
the women.
He's not going to have a good time week one. I know that. So, real quick, guys, we do have a sponsor for this stream. We have it BetUS, and guys, we do have right now some lines on BetUS. Okay, so I'm gonna bring this up real quick. We have the Jaguars win total. Okay, right now it's set at 8.5. The over is -130, meaning that if you were to bet $130, you could potentially win $100. So essentially, if you put $130 down and the Jaguars get 9 or more wins, you're going to be able to walk away with $230 in your pocket. And then under 8.5 is right now even. So, I'm curious if we get some get some thoughts here. So, I know Jason is a betting man. Okay. So
that's true.
I want to hear Jason. Okay. I'm giving you 100 Monopoly money dollars right now. Where are you feeling on this over under?
So I may or may not have already taken this line, just because like you said, I do like to dabble in the gambling scene. It gives me something to root for, I guess. I did take the over on the 8.5. I think this team is a little underrated in their talent based on how they finished last year. I think Vegas takes that into their algorithm and all of that. So I think they're a little better than 8.5. But I will say, I get where they're getting this number from. Like I said, you factor in how they ended last season, a new defensive coordinator, and just the tough schedule that they have. I mean, the AFC South, I think, is one of the best divisions in football. You look at playing 2 games overseas. You look at just their road games. It's not hard for me to envision a 9-win season, which is why I think this bet line was made. But for me, I think they'll overachieve. I think they'll go over 8.5. But I understand where they're coming from. But I may or may not have already smashed the over. That being said, I also smashed the over on the Texans over under as well. So I mean, what do I know? What do I know?
Yeah, and Jordan, I'm curious with you, man. We got 8.5 right now. The Jaguars finished 9-8 in each of the last 2 seasons. So they would have hit the over on here. How are you feeling so far about this line? Jordan, you're muted.
It's hard for me to see them winning less than 9 games. So I'm kind of with Jason here. 8 wins. I think somebody might be getting fired. Quite frankly, there might be some big changes, even though they've kind of gone all in on this situation. So it'll be difficult to see if the Jaguars only win 8 games. But I think as long as they have slightly better injury luck than last year, they're going to be hitting the over pretty easily. I would guess right now I'm looking at 10 or 11 wins. And there is a tough schedule. The AFC South has improved. I still think that the Jaguars are going to have a pretty good chance of sweeping the Colts, with the fact that the Colts defense is struggling with the corners. You've got Gus Bradley, who Trevor Lawrence loves to play against. You've also got potentially 3 rookie quarterbacks on the schedule with the Vikings, JJ McCarthy, Drake May, Caleb Williams. So I think the Jaguars are going to be able to get the job done and hit the over.
Yeah, and I know for myself, I mean, literally, if the Jaguars are able to stay healthy, which is not something that you can really count on, but I think the Jaguars would hit the over on this. And it's a tough schedule this year. I mean, your first 4 games is a complete gauntlet. I mean, you have 4 playoff teams. You have Miami, the Browns. You have to play the AFC South champions, the Houston Texans, and you have the Bills in Buffalo on Monday Night Football. So it is just a really, really tough schedule. But yeah, I'd have to hit the over on this. I mean, there's a lot of pressure on the Jaguars right now to be able to be great, and I think the Jaguars are definitely putting a lot of that pressure on themselves, and they know what's to be done. And I think they have a lot of good people in the building that understand, like, yeah, last year was unacceptable, so we're gonna go out here and do this. So with that said, guys, BetUS is a sponsor here. If you guys are interested in this line or any other line, check it out. They have a lot of different futures out there right now. And the Jaguars even, I don't know if it's out there right now, but they have preseason spreads. And last year, the Jaguars went 3-0 against the spread last year in the preseason. So if you guys are a maniac and want to get in on some preseason lines, all that is out there also for you. BetUS will get you a 125% deposit bonus on your first 3 deposits up to $2,500. They're quick 24-hour payouts, and they also have a gambler's insurance. So real quick, let's get a word from BetUS.
Michael Vick at BetUS.com. Catch an incredible 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits, plus 10% gambler's insurance. BetUS, my online sportsbook and casino.
All right.
Does anyone else find it wild that they're using Michael Vick to promote a gambling website? Am I the only one that?
Hey man, I'm not. He's not on my payroll.
Am I the only one that just thinks that's absolutely wild? I don't know. Maybe.
I don't know. I need to get
Maybe
some.
Calvin Ridley's next.
Yeah, maybe Calvin Ridley's next. That's true. Yeah, we got to get Jameson Williams also. He might be a good one, but definitely funny.
Hey,
but,
I know this is a live podcast, but can you get the names and the pictures lined up here, Dalton? Can we?
Yeah.
Can
Yeah,
we? Come on, can we have a little? Yeah, thank you.
Look,
you.
I like Jordan, but I don't like him enough to be Jordan. Okay, so I wish this StreamYard app. I don't know why I don't. Every time I switch the view, it like switches up the lineup. Like, come on, get on your game, man.
Yeah.
But
well,
whatever.
that's what
is
you
what
get.
it is. This is a low budget stream here. Okay.
Hey, you know, you can also gamble on, just throwing it out there. Maybe you want to gamble on the 3-on-3 Olympic basketball, and you want to see Jimmer Fredette and Canyon Barry for Team USA on the 3-on-3 basketball. You can bet on it. Just don't bet US, because the US team will lose. So don't do that.
Dude, Jimmer Fredette, that's a blast from the past right there for you.
Yeah.
And I know, isn't Scott Hansen? Have you guys watched like the Scott Hansen Red Zone version of the Olympics?
I haven't seen that. That sounds awesome though.
They announced that, but I don't know if it's out there or anything. But yeah, they're it's out
The
there.
gold
somewhere.
zone.
Yeah. but all right, let's get back. We got a few more rookies to get into. We're gonna fire through these guys. So Jerrion Jones, the Jaguars drafted in the 3rd round, not with the Jaguars pick though. Okay, Jerrion Jones was drafted with the compensatory pick received from Jawan Taylor signing for big bucks out there in Kansas City. The Jaguars, of course, lost their own 3rd rounder because of the aforementioned Calvin Ridley. So Jerrion Jones is out here. I know he's an excitable player, got a lot of enthusiasm. And let's
let's hear you go first on this one. You know, this is your this is your thing. You got the fans here. Let's hear. What do you think about?
You know, I usually like to go with you guys. So you guys know a lot.
No. We'll hear from you first. Let's hear from you.
But yeah, we'll go with me. I mean, man, Jerrion Jones, I think he's going to fit in there at the slot position. My main thing is like, how much of a competition is it really out there at slot cornerback? Because I know that's where, you know, once he went into that spot, that's where he really excelled for Florida State. And, you know, I just really wonder, because of course, Ryan Nielsen, there's no depth chart, but there's depth charts. But I really wonder, like, how is there a true competition for a slot cornerback spot? Is that up for grabs? I know right now Darnell Savage is getting paid starter money, but I don't know. I mean, if Jerrion Jones actually does have a really good training camp, and if he is out there, you know, I'm not at training camp, but if he's out there making a lot more plays than a Darnell Savage, you know, you got to remember the Jaguars have the Miami Dolphins week 1. I mean, they have Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. That's a lot of speed out there. So, you know, I don't know if they would rather a vet be out there, or maybe they'd rather a younger guy. You know, I don't know how much faster he is than him, but I don't know. I think at some point I think he will have an immediate role in this defense. It just depends on what kind of package that they throw at him. But yes, I do think that he could potentially start, but I think he'll be a starter probably by November, me personally.
Yeah, they're both really fast, so that is not an issue. They both ran sub 4.4 in the 40-yard dash. They both have speed. They've both been making plays. I think you've definitely seen Jerrion a little bit more involved, just because he's also doing outside work as well. So you're seeing more one-on-ones with Jerrion, with some guys than Darnell, but Darnell Savage has made some plays, couple pass breakups here and there. I have a hard time seeing them take Darnell off the field early until things maybe don't go as well as they expect, or something like that. But at the same time, it's like, how do you keep Jerrion Jones off the field? It is tough. It is really tough. And he's obviously not going to start outside for a Ronald Darby or Tyson Campbell. Those are your 2 starters on the outside to start the season. So it's going to be really interesting. I think that right now, if I had to put my money on it, I would say Darnell Savage is the starter. And you see packages where maybe they're both on the field. Maybe against the Dolphins, you want to get both of those guys out there because they can both fly and play on the field with same time as Darby and Campbell and figure that situation out that way. I don't know.
I think you guys kind of hit it on the head here, man. I know I love disagreeing with you all, but here I'm having a hard time because I think against the Dolphins, like you said, Dalton, you gotta kind of have that veteran guy out there that like can read passing concepts and kind of be more instinctual on where the ball is going to go. Although we didn't play a lot of slot in Green Bay. And you have Jerry Jones, who's a rookie. Are you going to throw him to the fire week 1? Like you said, Jordan, like maybe when things go wrong and we're like, all right, Darnell Savage cannot cover these inside receivers. And Jerry Jones did that in college. And so I'm just going to reinforce what you guys both just said. But I think initially we'll see Darnell Savage out there, but I don't think it'll take very long, maybe even halftime of the Dolphins game where you see Jerry Jones out there. I mean, you know, I was kind of going back and watching some Jerry Jones film. And I mean, he absolutely ate from the slot against Northern Alabama and Southern Miss. Now, I know we're talking about two subpar teams, probably the two worst teams on their schedule, but he also had an interception against Miami from the slot. So like he's actually not bad coming up and tackling. Like in college, he wasn't, you know, and so
he's not scared of any. He's not scared of anybody.
Right. Yeah. And I like that about him. The North Alabama game, he blitzed from the nickel spot and had a strip sack and recovered the fumble. He really can play a lot of versatile spots. And like Jordan said, you know, you might be in dime packages a lot against the Dolphins. You know, when you look at what he did in college and they'd run trips to the field, which essentially is what maybe like a modern NFL, an NFL dime package may look like. He was lined up where we're expecting Antonio Johnson to play. Like he was lined up at that spot and he did really well against Clemson. So I don't think it'll take long for him to get on the field. The elephant in the room is Ronald Darby's health, right? So if Ronald Darby can't stay healthy, then you bump him out, right? And then that's easy peasy. But if Darby does stay healthy, now you're looking at a position that personally me, and I know other Jags fans looked at as a position of weakness at corner as maybe not so much given if Antonio Johnson can kind of elevate a little bit. So I think we're in a good position with Jerry Jones. Expect to see him playing early and often. Hopefully they don't curtail him at the beginning of the season. I know the speed of the game, there's an adjustment to it, especially at corner. But yeah, I mean, I think you two were spot on with that.
Yeah, and we'll just have to see. So we'll go through the rest of these guys. Got a bunch more rookies to go through, and only 12 minutes left in the show. So don't want to work these guys too much overtime over here.
You don't want to do a 2-hour show like we do at Jaguars United, where we just go on forever.
Jason, you're built differently. Okay, you're built differently. Got to respect y'all's time for coming over here and putting on a quality show with me. So next up, Javon Foster, offensive tackle, Missouri. I mean, this is probably pretty easy. He'll be on the roster at some kind of probably swing tackle role. Jason or Jordan, do you see him? Is he mainly at left tackle, right tackle? Is he getting a little bit work on both sides? Let us know about him.
Yeah, he's done both so far. He's only worked at tackle though. They're not working him inside right now. It'll be really interesting with this tackle group because you've got 4 tackles right now. You've got 4 tackles. I know Cam Robinson's not taking any reps on the interior. He is a tackle. He's a left tackle. Anton Harrison is your right tackle. Walker Little, Doug Peterson talked about it today. He said that he could play left or right tackle, and obviously their plan was for him to come in at guard last year. He ended up getting injured that game when he was going to start at guard and didn't play very much. But it'll be really interesting because, like, you usually don't keep 4 guys that are playing pretty much exclusively tackle. Usually that's not how it goes. But I think that's how it will go in Jacksonville unless they make a move. And so, yeah, I think that Javon Foster, getting the pads on this week, I've seen a couple one-on-one reps for him, and I saw him handle himself very well against DJ Coleman, who's a guy that's been around that the Jaguars like a little bit. And that's pretty much all I've seen on a consistent basis from him. But I haven't seen anything egregious. But I did see that one rep that really did impress me. Using his hands, his feet and his hands are coordinated, punch timing. And DJ Coleman tried to, swat the hands away. He said, no, sir, and was able to lock him up pretty easily. So I think Javon Foster has a future at the very least of a swing tackle for the Jags.
Sweet. So, yeah, I mean, well, here, you got something to say, Jordan?
Yeah, I do. You know I do.
Let's hear it. Let's hear it.
So I think Javon Foster, Javon Foster is actually one of my like drafts kind of like crushes. He really was. I mean, first team All SEC. Like, I mean, he's a dude, and like, every scout falls in love with a certain trait about certain positions. And the thing that I fall in love with at tackles is big, strong, patient tackles. That's what I love to see. Guys that don't get beat by fake moves or stunts or anything like that. And he's so patient. Like, he has strength and size, but he doesn't let any of this like window dressing, as we call it, get to him. Like, he sees stunts coming. He the spin move, he lets the spin happen, then he punches. For me, what I've seen, tackles that do that tend to have good careers in the NFL. And so I know he was a later round pick for whatever reason, but I think he's a guy that, like, hypothetically, you move on from Cam Robinson at the trade deadline, move in Walker Little. Now he's your legit swing tackle there. So I like Javon Foster. I think he's a guy that there's an injury or a trade that we might see, and I'm okay with that. I think he's better than people think.
And I'll just leave it at this. He's the only left tackle under contract through 2025. So,
that's a good point. That's a good point.
We'll just have to see if he has a good, he might get his own opportunity here if hopefully the Jaguars don't get injured. Hopefully we don't have to go to our third left tackle this season, although we were kind of looking at that last year in a ways. But
the good news is if you do, it's Javon.
Yeah, exactly.
There was
not
one
Ezra
play.
Cleveland.
There was one play against Kansas State where they threw a screen and he got out like 20 yards and just destroyed a defensive back. And again, certain things I love seeing on film. That's one thing I love seeing.
The Jaguars like their athletic linemen. That's for sure. So speaking of athletic linemen, I don't know if this guy's athletic at all, but another defensive tackle out of LSU, although body type is way different, is a Jordan Jefferson. Jordan, are you seeing Jordan Jefferson play more like behind Devon Hamilton, or is he kind of in that nose tackle role for the Jags?
He's going to be biased because they have the same first name. He's going to be biased, so we can't take
all the way up the depth chart.
Yeah, I haven't noticed him a ton so far. On tape, you could see just the physicality, the strength against the run. Really good football player in that regard. I think that even though I haven't noticed him a lot, I don't know if y'all heard that thunder. He's clearly a guy that looks more like and plays more like a Devon Hamilton than a penetrating three tech type of player, more of that space eater, gap eater, stuff the run. I think there's a little bit more to his game potentially than that, but that's kind of the prototype that he fits, the mold that he fits in.
I mean, his 2022 West Virginia film is like legit. Like, it is 9.5 tackles for loss and he played primarily nose at West Virginia. And like, he's just a hard dude to move. So those guys can always carve out a path in the NFL. So if he can do that in the NFL, then that was a good pick.
Yeah. So next up, DeAndre Prince, 5th round pick. Jaguars are always connected to him. Had some had on a combine visit, top 30 visit him at his pro day. Jordan, what are you seeing out of DeAndre Prince? And is he the first guy that goes in if one of your outside cornerback goes down?
Well, no, I would say Jarian would be the first guy that would go in if one of the outside guys goes down. And I don't think Prince would even be the second guy right now. He is very competitive. I think you saw on tape and you see so far in Jacksonville, there's times where he just really sees what the receiver is trying to do or how the offense is trying to attack him, and he can just lock it down. And he's got the speed and athleticism to compete at a high level in man coverage. There's some moments where he looks like a rookie, but that's to be expected. But he's been very competitive, very, very competitive. And I've liked what I've seen so far from him, because a lot of rookies, they get out there, especially guys drafted as late as he was, which I thought he should have been late third, early fourth round type of pick this year. He ended up falling a lot further than that. It was a deep cornerback class, deep class in general, at some key positions. But Prince can fly. He's smart. He's also a guy that's not afraid to get physical. You're seeing all those attributes out there on the field. So I think he's going to end up making the football team. And he would be in competition right now to be, in my opinion, the guy after Jarian outside. I think that he'd be in competition with like Christian Braswell and Buster Brown right now.
Interesting.
I hate agreeing with Jordan, but he's spot on here. He's spot and like he's like everything he said is spot on. I think if he wouldn't have had the weird transfer to the JUCO halfway through college because of like he had some family issues happening, then transferring back to Ole Miss. But again, kind of talked about with Javon Foster, things that I love to see on film at certain positions. For a man corner, which Ryan Nielsen's going to run, a guy who can play the hip, get to the hip, and then play through the hands. Because when you're in man, a lot of times you're not looking at the quarterback, you're playing the receiver. And like Jordan said, very smart. His timing is excellent at playing through the hands, doesn't get pass interference calls, breaks up passes without looking at the quarterback or even knowing when the ball was thrown. And for a man press corner, that's what you want. So I agree with Jordan. It's going to take him some time. But when you look at the depth we had at corner in the previous years compared to him, he's an immediate upgrade for guys that we bring in at that position.
Yeah.
So next up, the Jaguar. We spoke a lot about Keelan Robinson a couple of weeks ago, so I don't want to go too much into him. We have Cam Little also in the 6th round. Look, Riley Patterson just got cut, so he is your Jaguars kicker, and he's been pretty good during training camp from all accounts. So the last guy I want to talk about is 7th round pick Miles Cole. Now this is one of those like athletic freak guys that you draft in the 7th round, like basically because he's just got insane measurables, huge wingspan. Jordan, what are you seeing out of camp from a Miles Cole?
I mean, he's big, he's athletic, he's raw. I think there's a reason the Jaguars signed 2 defensive ends last night.
Okay.
So I don't think he's
squad,
ready.
maybe practice squad.
I didn't think he was ready watching him at Texas Tech. I don't think he's ready to contribute. Like if you have an injury at edge, you want somebody who's a professional. You have Travis Gibson, who is a professional who can do that. Now you have 2 guys who are
Travis Gibson,
legitimate professionals that can come in and, you're going to have a rotation up front, but you also need to have depth in case of injury. And now I think you have 2 guys that have at least done it at a decently high level and been productive at times throughout their career in Gibson and Green.
Yeah. And Jason, how deep have you dove into
it's
Miles
hard for
Cole's
me
tape?
It's hard for me to go all in on a 7th round pick.
It's a 7th round pick. These guys don't usually make the roster, guys.
But I'm gonna try here. Okay, I'm gonna try. So look, here's like about Miles Cole. He's so big. Like it was like 6'7". He's so big that like he covers a lot of space like quickly. Like when you go back and look at the BYU game, and BYU is not a scrub team, right? BYU is pretty good. And like he ate against BYU in space. Now put him in Mike Caldwell's defense, and now we're talking like we got something, right? A guy that you're going to drop a D end into coverage, playing the screens, playing the outside zones, which he does well when he's in space. Then he's a lock. In the Ryan Nielsen defense, I like his athleticism. I think you were spot on, Dalton. You take a flyer on his athleticism in the late rounds. I hope that I'm right, but I think he's going to be, I know I've said this a lot, but I think he's going to be better than people think. I like the way that he plays in space by himself. For someone that big, he does move laterally and changes directions really well, which is what you want from a D end. So, if there's a rotational piece to it or an injury, maybe he flashes, and that's the best thing that could happen for his career. And hopefully it happens for him.
Yeah. And like I said earlier, like these 6th, 7th round picks, unless you're the 2013 Jaguars, you're not really expecting, if you throw a pick at them like that and they don't make it on, it's not the end of the world. Sometimes
or Brock Purdy, the golden boy of the
you could go Mr. Irrelevant and get a guy like him. But we have Trevor Lawrence, so we don't need any of that action on this team. So real quick, guys, we're coming up on the end of the show. If you guys have any last minute questions, you guys can throw a super chat over here, and we'll definitely be sure to read off your questions. Because I know we have a lot of people asking normal questions in a chat, but unfortunately can't get to all of them. But we have my friend Daniel in here, and guys, this is my friend, maybe former friend, trying to message me. Said, Dalton, that jacket is making me feel some type of way, which I appreciate it. You can talk to my wife about that. Okay.
I will
buddy.
say, when I talk to my friends that watch this show, their first comment is like, wow, like Dalton is with the hair and the jacket. That's the first comment I hear. Let me just put it out there.
I mean, I come dressed to impress. Okay, I'm what you call, I guess, a host. So I got to make sure that I go in a different form. Okay, usually I'm t-shirt and hat for my videos. With this show, guys, okay, I put a lot of time and energy into this. I got to come out looking my freshest. Okay, so
you're the Steve Harvey of the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Hey, I do what I can. But yeah, thank you, I guess, Daniel, for really opening up your wallet and donating the $2. Really appreciate you interrupting the channel with that nonsense. Shout out to Victor, $2 holla. He says, cheers to a fun season. Thank you for the positivity and for not being like Daniel. And the final one, this one actually came in before the show started, so we're going to end off with him. Vincent says, with padded running reps live now, has Anton developed as a run blocker? And yes, Anton Harrison was definitely kind of graded a lot better in the pass grading category as opposed to the run category. I know we've only had 2 padded practices, but have you been able to see much Anton Harrison really pushing some people, Jordan?
Yeah, it's hard to say so far, really, just because it is so new and so, like you said, 2 padded practices. But I will say, to start off practice today, you saw a big Tank Bigsby run in between the guard and the tackle on the right side, and there was a huge hole. So those 2 guys were getting the job done, Brandon Sheriff and Anton Harrison, on that play specifically. And just for a little context, like when the Jaguars play on the far field during the team portion of practice, it's really difficult to see everything that's going on. And it's a little bit more easy when they're on the closer field. You get a better vantage point. But I will say I saw at least 1 rep today where Anton Harrison absolutely handled his business in the run game.
Sweet, man. That's good to hear. We also had Victor throw another $2 donation with just a thanks. No, Victor. Thank you. And thanks everybody.
I know we're over time. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But I want to get
all billable hours, okay? So
yeah. These are the hours I thrive. Y'all know this, okay? Y'all know this. But just real quick, both of y'all, and it could be a quick answer. Is there a scenario where next season Anton Harrison's our left tackle? Do either of you see that scenario in your brains? Is there any chance that happens?
Absolutely. I mean, you don't have any, like I was saying earlier, Walker Little and Cam Robinson are not under contract next year. And a lot of times you want your, better pass protector at left tackle, and maybe you want your better run blocker at the right tackle spot. But I mean, absolutely. I mean, he's really the only, right now when it comes to the Jaguars starting 5, Anton Harrison is the only true building block we have right now, which is a little bit concerning, but it is what it is. So I could definitely see him playing left tackle.
Yeah, I could too, for sure. It'll just depend on what happens. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if one of Walker Little or Cam Robinson is back next year. Also wouldn't be surprised if they say, hey, Anton Harrison is our left tackle. We're going to go find a right tackle and not pay them quite as much as we were paying a Cam Robinson type of situation. Or maybe they say, can Javon Foster play right tackle for us? This is a guy that started a lot of games at Missouri. I think I'm making sure. I think he almost exclusively played left tackle at Missouri.
Did. Yeah. Well, his last year he did anyways. Yeah.
Yeah. So he has some reps at right tackle. Going back to 2020 is the last time he's played right tackle, but he is getting reps there in camp. Not exclusively, certainly, but so is he a guy that could maybe play right tackle, Anton Harrison play left tackle, or do you feel comfortable with him playing left tackle and just keeping Anton Harrison where he's grown comfortable on the right side, even though Anton played left tackle in college as well? So there's definitely some different ways they can go about it. I would be in favor of trying to keep Walker Little personally. I don't think he's going to be very expensive. So we'll see how that plays out.
Spicy stuff.
That's funny because Jordan told me offline that he thought Luke Fortner should play left tackle. So that's wild that,
man.
he's saying that here now.
Yeah, he's
yeah.
not
Luke and
on
I
record,
share the same
but-
birthday, so he's my guy.
And then Jordan Jefferson going way up the depth chart because of sharing the same name.
Yeah, Jordan Jefferson is DT1. Luke Fortner is OT1. So that's just how it goes, y'all.
Lots of stuff going on over here. So by the way, guys, so we are live on YouTube and Twitter. I don't know if you guys can see this on your end, but currently 444 people are watching right now. 376 from Twitter and 68 from YouTube. So I don't know, man. I might be investing some more time here on the X. Okay. Paying for Twitter and getting that blue check mark. It's turning me into a different man. Okay. So also shout out to Instagram. We have 4 people on Instagram watching us. So gotta love the IG platform. But all right, guys, that's gonna do it for this show, episode 3 of Club Jaguar. Thank you, Jordan and Jason, for both joining us. Jordan, what you got coming up on the YouTube channel?
Hey, thank you for getting this together. Club Jaguar, only club I want to be on a Wednesday night. What do I have coming up? A day off from training camp tomorrow. The Jaguars will be in the stadium on Saturday for kind of one of those big fan practices where everybody gets to come out to the stadium and have a good time a little bit later in the morning than normal. But tomorrow I'll be doing 10 or so standouts from training camp so far, just talking about the guys that have really stood out above the rest of the team so far. And it's going to be hard to limit it to 10 because there's been a lot of really good performances, especially on the defensive side of the ball. But it's going to be a lot of fun to do that. And then just training camp coverage. And then obviously preseason number 1, I think, is August 10th. So that's not very far away. Week and a half, something like that. And so we'll have previews and obviously breaking down everything we can from that game as well.
And what you got coming up, Jason? I told you you're going live last week. You never did, and people were coming after me for it. So
yeah,
so what you got
that makes
coming up?
sense. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense for me. Once the season starts, we'll go back to our Tuesday and Friday schedule of live shows, where we just do live shows and we just kind of let the fans talk, and we talk about everything from Jags to personal life things to politics. We do all sorts of things. So that's what we do. But until then, I appreciate you guys. Jordan, thank you seriously for updates in training camp. Dalton, thanks for doing this show. Your fan base is awesome. You guys are awesome. I have a great time here. So I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely. But all right, guys, appreciate everyone going in here. If you guys haven't already, please drop a like on the stream. Really, really helps it out. Shout out to BetUS for sponsoring this stream. Like I said, 125% deposit bonus down below. And see you guys next week. Go Jags.